So, so Ray,
Hello,
and anybody in
Max.
the chat who's got some questions for Ray, fire them out. But Ray, I know you are a longtime role playing gamer.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, Ray actually Dungeon Masters a private game among us PANA members, in which I'm fortunate enough to play in. So I wanted to ask you just sort of which came first for you, role playing games or audiobooks?
Oh, role-playing games by far. I've been playing role-playing games since the 80s, back with my friends from across the street and my brother. And we didn't, it was like a classic start. We're just, around 10 years old, teenagers and early teenagers, and didn't necessarily get the rules all right or really understand exactly how everything was supposed to work.
Yeah.
But we just sort of like put together characters and play with it. And especially my one friend was really good at running games, and they never lasted very long, but we had a good time with it. And then in high school, I picked it back up again with second edition, and we played in a couple games in high school, and then sort of got away and played other games. I've been playing all sorts of games pretty much my whole life. Board games, video games, role-playing games. And then when fourth edition came out and they started doing the podcasts, I started listening to some of those. I was like, oh, that's so much fun. I should get back into it. And so I got some fourth edition stuff and played tried to play a few fourth edition games. And then those, as most D&D campaigns go, they stopped when people couldn't schedule anymore.
Yeah.
And then sort of picked back up again several years later with 5th edition, and when some of the online tools got a little stronger, and have been playing 5th edition with some fair regularity for the last several years. And so when the opportunity came up that PANA was going to do a D&D groups, I was like, I want to be in on that, because the narrator community is awesome, and the idea to be able to get to play games with fellow narrators was great. I knew when I checked, I could probably GM, that was probably gonna be GMing, because
That's the way it goes.
it's just a little bit of volunteer, and it's like, you're in. But it's been really great. I've been enjoying the game that we've been in, trying to make that one fun. Although we do have to get a session in. There's one thing about
It's been
having
a while.
a bunch of a bunch of narrators, or schedules can be fairly flexible, because we're usually at home in the booth all day, so we can do like a morning session. That's great, but when you're crunched with a book, you got to work on your book, and it's like, no, sorry, I can't play today because I got a deadline. But we'll get back to it.
Yeah, and you've been very very generous about doing that for understandable reasons. Rachel is asking in the chat, what is the favorite character that you've ever role played?
That's hard, because for one thing, most of the campaigns I do, like I've never been part of a campaign that really lasted a long time, right? They've always kind of gone like several sessions, and then like someone had to drop out, so all right, let's start something else, or it's like finished like a short campaign. It's like, all right, let's do something else. So I've never really gotten attached to any one specific character, and I'm always interested in trying something different the next time I play, because I like to. And some people, and it's perfectly fine, probably like a very specific style of play. Like, oh, I really like being the melee fighter, and I don't want to have to worry about spells or stuff like that. I like to try like all the different ones. So I've been playing a whole bunch of different types of characters and different classes, which I enjoy. But then, of course, that means that I've never really gotten that attached to any specific one. I know there was one character that when I was first starting with a group of friends online, hopping into one of their campaigns, it was I can't remember the name of the race, was like sort of like a wolf race. It was a thunder cleric, and so I had a good time, like calling down lightning and using the abilities, like those cleric abilities, as like a wolf type of wolfman type character. That
Like
was
Wolf
pretty fun.
Thor. That sounds awesome.
It was pretty good.
So on the subject of the flexibility of audiobook scheduling, because we do work at home and we can sort of work whenever we want to work, but when you've got a family, often you can work whenever you want to work means you can also not work whenever you want to not work, and that can be a challenge. I think for a lot of I mean, I think it's a challenge for anybody who works at home, but I know it's a challenge for a lot of narrators how you can sort of have and create and protect your work time while also sort of engaging with your family responsibilities. Can you talk a little bit about how you make that work?
Sure. Yeah, it's quite a bit of a challenge for me because yeah, working at home, and I actually have a pretty big family. I have 7 kids. The oldest is 16. We're working on driving with him. The youngest is 4. And so the younger ones are still at home during the day during the school year, and I can hear them running around upstairs sometimes in my booth, which can be very frustrating if I'm trying to get something done. What I do have is also my wife is a CPA, and she works from home as well. And so with her support, she will sort of make sure the kids are doing okay while she gets her work done so that I can spend time down in the booth recording. Wow. So yeah, that's pretty great, especially, and a part of that is because we're trying to build up my narration so that hopefully she can step back because we used, before we had kids and early when we had kids, we both worked. And then around the Great Recession in 2010, I got laid off and we were having kids, and we sort of only never wanted to both have to work and put kids in daycare and stuff. So I kind of stopped working and I did stay at home dad for a while. And then when I started wanting to do something else, I got into audiobooks as a great job to do at home, but sort of kept that part-time for a long time because my wife was making the money that was paying the mortgage. Now she wants to be able to, while some of the kids are still young, be able to pull back from her work, and hopefully my audiobook work can replace that. So she's giving me lots of extra time compared to when I got started and was doing part-time to be down here and try to work as much as I can. And actually get a full-time amount of work done.
Well, that is amazing. Emmy in the chat is saying, that we have 1 kid and a dog, and that's exhausting. So
I am tired a lot.
Yeah, to manage all that and to have a spouse, a spouse that is as supportive, and to be then as supportive of her as you are. That sounds. And so I think everybody in the chat is sort of agog at how impressive that is.
Yeah.
So you said you got into audiobooks as a sort of a stay-at-home job, but there's a lot of those. So what was it about audiobooks that attracted you?
Well, the first thing was when I got into local theater. That was back where my first son was around 1, so I guess it was about 15 years ago. That's kind of frightening to think about it in those terms. That's a long time. But I'd always kind of been interested in acting, and I never did anything with it for a long time besides one intro to acting class back in college, which one kind of interesting thing there, we were doing intro to acting things as a college course, and the professor, as we were in the class, a couple times said to me, and didn't say this to anybody else, said, "Hey, you can make money with your voice." I was like, really? I never ever thought about that. And I sort of asked him at the end of the class, how would I do that? And he just kind of brushed me off because he was busy. Oh, you do a demo or whatever. All right, whatever. I got a computer science degree. I'm here to program, and so I didn't worry about that. But the acting thing sort of stuck around. So when I saw a local theater send out a flyer with audition dates on, I was like, oh, you can actually go and audition for shows at theaters? I was like, I didn't know that's how that worked. I thought they had a private group that they picked from or whatever. So I went on auditioned and I got cast in a play. And I did a couple plays a year for a number of years. I was like, this acting thing is a lot of fun. It's great. I also had started listening to audiobooks around that time and really got into those and enjoyed that and thought, you know what, it would be a lot of fun to do these. Also, me and my wife would read books to each other for years. We'd read out loud. So when I heard from some other friends about, hey, here's this company that you can go to and get voiceover training with, and here's this website that you can go to and audition for audiobooks. It's I went and I talked to my wife about it, and she said, yeah, you probably have something that you you can do on the side. I went, we did several weeks of voiceover training, signed up on ACX and started auditioning, and that's where it all started.
That's fantastic. So, so speaking of books, as the rest of the crew is settling back in their booths and closing booth doors or leaving doors open for the air conditioning, Lauren is coming to us from Texas. So it is amazing that Lauren has not dissolved into a puddle of sweat just during this 1 hour. But as that is all happening, Ray, is there a book you want to plug for us? You want to draw people's attention to?
Sure. The book I had for this week is called Legacy of Shadow. And what's interesting about it for me personally is that, so I'm a gamer. I talked about this before. I play games my whole life, including listening to gaming podcasts. And there was one gaming podcast that I listened to for a long time called the D6 Generation. And one of the hosts of that podcast, Craig Gallant, had talked about his own, like, trying to start his own writing career and having a book published. And that was impetus for me listening to that to reach out to that publisher as a new audiobook narrator and say, hey, I'm narrating audiobooks now, and I listen to this podcast and I would love to narrate this guy's audiobook. And that started a relationship with the company Winged Tazar Publishing, and I've done several of their books now, and including Craig's book, which is a science fiction kind of an epic sci-fi. Starts off, with a couple of guys on Earth that end up going to this space city and having all sorts of adventures, including big space battles and all sorts of great, fun, epic sci-fi stuff that is the type of stuff that I would really enjoy working on, because that's the sort of stuff I like to read. And so it was just really cool to do this book that is the type of book that I like to do, connected to, like, this person that, like, I've had listened to their podcast, and then, of course, got to be able to interact with them more directly, being on their podcast as a part of having done the book. And so it really, like, has a big personal connection for me, and I really enjoyed it. And hopefully you guys will check it out and enjoy it too.
Yeah, that sounds spectacular. Yeah, everybody go check that out. And the link is in the video description.